Hey guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hat Tuesday number 18. Hat Tuesday number 18. Hopefully you guys are enjoying your 2026 so far. I'm having a really good start, getting things done and being productive, or at least trying to be, right? I'm still kind of like easing into the swing of things. Hopefully you guys are as well. Man, what a year 2025 has been. Obviously, I'm still reflecting on 2025. Uh, Looking forward to really getting into the thick of things with 2026. I have big plans. For a variety of things. Over time, I'll share some of those with you. You guys heard already some of those plans, but hopefully, you guys are doing the same. Like I said, you may not. Maybe you had a fantastic 2025 and you just hope to have a continuation in 2026. There's nothing wrong with that. I didn't have a bad 2025. It was a mixed bag, right? Obviously this channel was one of the highlights of 2025, and I can't really argue with the success that we've had. Right, like I know I mentioned before, I didn't reach that 100 subscriber mark, but we're at I think 84 now. So that's not anything to sneeze at. I'm quite pleased with that. Don't get me wrong. And we got Josh here. Josh, good morning. How you doing? Hopefully you're having a pretty good start to your 2026. Good to see you, my friend. Yeah, like I said, I was just talking about 2025. I'm still like in kind of reflection mode as I am in like kind of planning mode, for all the things I want to accomplish in 2026. I don't know. I just feel like I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one in that respect. I think a lot of folks tend to do that. But I always wonder, right? If anybody's, thinking about the same things as I am, anybody have similar goals, obviously that's where this channel really plays into that, because obviously we have a lot of folks that are into hats, just like I am. And I definitely have hat goals, right? The hat goals, career goals, life goals. In terms of life goals, obviously losing a little bit of weight is part of that. I think that's very common, across people. The idea of, all right, in the new year, I'm gonna lose a few lbs, right? If you want to put it in the English system, you guys across the pond will use kilograms, kilos. Paul, how's it going, my
Oh,
friend?
how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Just talking a little bit about, I'm still kind of in reflection mode on 2025, as I start easing into the goals and start trying to accomplish some of the goals I set for 2026. One of which, yeah, we got Josh saying hi,
Yeah.
Paul.
Hi, Josh.
um, I think I mentioned this on the group chat, is that I was able to start the process of reinstating the LLC that I had. I started many years ago that I let kind of expire. Hopefully that goes well and I can get that LLC back. Either way, I'll just start a new LLC. It's not a problem. I just really like the name, and well, that will be the first salvo in starting some of those ideas that we talked about. One is setting up some sort of online store so I can sell some of these many hats, right? I'm
Yeah.
temporarily homing.
Well, do you know what? I had a look under my beds. I actually sleep with my hats. How odd is that? In so much as I've got storage underneath the bed, but
Yeah,
and I've probably got 80 hats under my bed, something like that.
yeah.
And I thought, today I'm gonna have a look. And honestly, Luke, I've probably got 25 to 30 hats that I need to clean and put up on the site, because
Me
whenever I
too.
see a hat, especially one that's either I'm giving away my trade secrets now, but
Yeah, yeah,
so Herbert Johnson, Bates and Co,
yeah.
Laird, these sort of top London brands, which they're not much in America, I know, but well, maybe Lock and Co is, but in the UK they're known brands, so I know
Yeah,
that I can buy them, at a fairly good price, and then
yeah,
refurbish them, make a video of it because it always makes good content, and then put them up for sale. But
yeah.
I put them
No,
in.
that's the process, right? I mean,
That's it.
obviously, again, and I'll reiterate this. I have sold hats. I never considered myself a hat seller because I didn't really like it. Wasn't kind of a main thing. Like I bought
Hmm.
all these hats, in general, unless the hat really doesn't fit, right? So if it's a bigger hat, only because I know that when I find a bigger hat, I know that there's some vintage nerd out there with a bigger head than I am, that I have, that they would want that hat because it's a little harder to find. And so I'll take those with the idea, okay, well, either I can resize it, put a little stuffing in there and make it fit my head and maybe wear it for a little bit. But in the interim, until somebody that has that size that says, you know what, I want that hat, and then we'll work a deal.
Yeah, yeah. So is that the Nutura hat you got on there?
Yes, it is.
I thought it's a really nice color on you. Yeah,
man, I love it. I really love this hat. I got to tell you, I was doing a little bit of research, right? So, and for all you guys that don't know, and I'll post something a little bit later on for this hat. But basically, when I went to London, I had purchased 3 hats from Paul, and Paul was nice enough to gift me a 4th one. So, they were all, as far as I'm aware, they're all considered vintage hats. Because vintage is one of those things that it means different things to different people. But I believe the formal definition, at least the one that a lot of people tend to espouse, is 25 years or older. That doesn't really take that much to get the 25-year mark right now. That's 2000, right?
Yeah.
So time flies. But with that respect, all these hats will be considered vintage or well beyond the vintage. And so obviously I had to go through, because Lago Marcimo.
That's it.
Did I get it? Lago Marcino?
Yeah.
Hopefully I didn't butcher that, but they are a brand that I wasn't aware of until Paul mentioned them. And I was like, first of all, never heard of this brand. So that's already some intrigue there. Second of all, they're based in South America, which is, I don't think I have another hat from South America. I could be wrong. And then the third would be obviously the felt material, Naturia or Nutria, right? And I'm familiar with the animal, but I've never seen, a felted hat made out of this animal. And, I felt like, okay, it checked all those boxes. So I said, you know what? I got to have me that. And obviously it was within my size. I think this is technically a 59 centimeter.
I think so, but they size up a little bit smaller.
Yeah, but it fits really well. So I'm like, you know what? That little bit of extra space gives me a little room to hat tilt if I want to flip the brim down. I just love the way it feels. And when I looked it up and I did the research, and I go again, ChatGPT is not the end all and be all, but ChatGPT is convinced, based on photos and the information that I've inputted, that it's manufactured somewhere between 1960 and 1975.
Yeah.
So pretty good. I mean, you got to see. I do have some photos. I'll share that a little bit later. Or maybe I'll share it now if you want to kind of take walk through this. I don't know how much information you have, Paul, on this brand. From when it was in your
not a great deal. I did the Chat GPT thing with you, and I was quite taken with the Nutura, because obviously it's a sustainable material, better than look, beaver's lovely, but Nutura I think is a working man's beaver felt, if you like, and it's supposed to be really strong and robust and very water repellent. So all those things added up to think, okay, that must be a good hat. Now, the other thing was that the brand is actually less expensive to buy secondhand, because people don't know the brand.
Right.
So the value for money out of that felt is just tremendous, because to buy a Nutura felt now will cost you a couple of $100, no doubt, in America, and then making that out of it, you're talking probably $600 upwards, so you sort of think, well, that's a pretty jazzy color. It's the size of brim suits you as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I mean, it's just another one to add to the collection. The problem is when you come to think about what you're going to sell, you think to yourself, well, sure, I look pretty good in that, and it is Nutura, and I really don't want to sell it. And you know where you are,
No, I appreciate that. No, you are absolutely right. And the thing about this brand is that they go back to 1891, I believe, is the year. So I'm like, wow, this is a very, very, storied, right? So it's a very historic brand. And how have I not heard about this brand up until this point? But it does happen. And it's one of those things where I know that in the 1960s, just like a lot of hat companies, they were, I guess, struggling, and they did sell the company. The original owners, or at least the original family, sold the company to another family. I believe the new owners, because Lago Marcino is the last name of the founders, and they sold it to a family. I believe it's called the Riera family in Argentina. And there's so much great things about this hat that I've already uncovered, which is one, in that time, during the period of manufacture for that era, this company, and just like a lot of other companies, they would put the branding of the sweatband. So the people that made the leather sweatband is a separate company, a separate entity. They're also a very well-known brand. I believe it's called Estribos Argentina. And they are leather. They focus on leather, and you can see that because I saw the name on the sweatband, and I'm like, what's that about? I thought it was the city. It turned out Estribos is the name of the company that manufactures the sweatband. So I was like, wow, that's awesome. So now it made me want to find out more. I didn't have enough time to do the extra research on the leather company, but I thought I'd share that with you, Paul. That makes perfect sense. You know what I mean? And I guess later on in the company's history, they moved away from putting other brands other than their own, and kind of makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody's interested, whilst they're watching this video, I've actually done a video on the restoration of that hat, I think, on my channel. So awesome. It's if you're a bit of a hat geeks like we are, or enthusiasts, should I say, you know, then it's 10 minutes of your life that you can perhaps enjoy just seeing how it comes all scrumpled up and then it finishes up looking like that, which is fabulous, really.
Man, I'll tell you. And then
hi, Nathan.
Who we got here? Oh, Nathan. Hey, Nathan. How's it going, Nathan? How you doing? Hope all is well. Hopefully you I don't know if you're still traveling, Nathan. I know you were traveling during the last show, but hopefully all went well and you're back home safe. If not, maybe you're still on the road. But I do wish you safe travels, and it's always nice to see folks check in from the road. It makes me like, when I see folks, and I'll tell you, I've shared this before, when I go on my walks during the morning, I always like going on my walks around the time when the kids are going to school, or when folks are going out to work, because it just gets me charged up to get my day started. So
brilliant. Yeah.
And Nathan says, I'll try to jump on in a bit. That sounds good, Nathan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah. I was really interested to see the conversation we had about the subject today was something that you wanted to bring forward, and hopefully we've got Robert coming on, have we?
Yeah, that'd be great. Josh, I don't know if anybody wants to ping Robert, because sometimes and this is all my fault, because I kind of wait to the last minute to kind of announce. If I had, yesterday might as well be a last week, you know what I mean? So sometimes what happens is, because of my lack of planning, if I had done things the right way, I would have given you guys maybe at least 24 hours notice. That way you guys can adjust your schedules if possible, or I have the opportunity to postpone, because I really did want you and Robert part of this conversation, and as well as the others. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I know it's a conversation that Robert, as well as yourself, Paul, have put forward. So I really wanted to have you guys on, because I think it's an important conversation, to be honest. It's one of those things that people talk about, or at least think about, if you don't have somebody to talk about hats with. Now you do, because you have our channels here. But it's an important conversation, because, who defines this whole word of quality, or who sets the standard?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. I think I like to think, as every hatter does, that we're forever learning and improving in our craft, in our art, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But it is a journey that we're on, and there are people out there that have made one or two hats and feel that they are good enough to then sell to the public. Now, the challenge with that is that they may well be good, but on the other hand, most of the ones that we've seen perhaps could do with a little bit of fettling here and there
Yeah.
to improve the presentation ready for sale. And indeed, things like packaging and what you include with the hat, and all of those other things need to be sort of thought through, I guess, as to I think a very good line of thought is, how would you as a consumer want to receive a hat that you've just paid a lot of money for, or an amount of money for, let's say, and just list it down, and about how you want to receive it. But I think the quality of the hat is the thing that we were talking about, is how can we or do, at the moment there are more and more people taking up hat making and joining the various social media boards. We're seeing various levels of quality come out into the marketplace. And I guess what a lot of us don't want to see is the general public's mindset about buying a custom hat influenced by perhaps hats that aren't made up to a certain standard.
Right.
But what is that standard? And how do we monitor, manage, and actually tell the public that PJ Murphy and Son works to a particular standard? Well,
correct.
And who defines what that standard is, and so on. And what was interesting is when I looked at ChatGPT and how they defined a master hatter, it's a name, if you like, that anybody can bestow themselves,
right,
without any formal qualifications. So there's nobody that actually tells you are now a master hatter. What they do, what ChatGPT has managed to glean from the internet world for me, is that there are some standards which they're suggesting that as hatters we should be able to do, and that's the full restoration of a second-hand hat, the replacement of a sweatband, the blocking of a new hat, the whole build of a new hat, to be able to use the equipment, the blocks, the tools, the sewing machines, all of these various things. And there's probably 100 different things that they list down. And as a little exercise, I went through them all, and fortunately for me, I could do them all. And in fact, what they did say was that the sort of ultimate test, and I thought that was quite interesting choice of words, was actually for a hatter to be able to make a Homburg hat, because they felt that was the most difficult hat to make. Now, I don't know whether that's the case or not. I've made a couple of Homburgs, and I've been happy with the result. I haven't sold any. I have got a customer who wants one now, but I do like a Homburg, and I've bought and sold lots of secondhand ones and refurbished them. But that was an interesting factor.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a whole host of things that come to mind, right? So obviously we talked about like because what we're talking about really is like the framework, right? What are the framework that defines let's just call it, for lack of a better term, because I know that we've talked about gradations, right? Maybe there's levels to this, right? Where you want to get to master hatter, one would think, well, that's the highest level, right? But taking away that point and holding that equal, let's just talk about what makes a hatter. And we have to kind of think about what are all those points. Like one thing I thought about, I kind of also did a list, and obviously I'm not a hatter. I am somebody that is very big into frameworks because of my background in psychology. So I try to at least start from a layperson, a framework of things that could be taken into consideration. And obviously, like Paul mentioned, there's going to be 100. There could be 100. I mean, I'm just speculating here of different things. But the idea is, one, what is that framework? What is the most parsimonious framework that can distinguish somebody that has the skills versus does not have the skill to call themselves a hatter, right? And then two, how do we set up a measurement system? So obviously there's only, you either get certified or you don't get certified. We have to find that point where it demarcates somebody that is minimally competent, right? So the minimally competent hatter, once you get to that point, we can call you a hatter. And then anybody that's below that point, obviously they will not be able to call themselves a hatter by this particular governing body, if it so exists.
So there's two things I'd like to pick up, if I may. One is the framework thing is exactly how I looked at it, and what I looked at was the journey. So the journey from, and if I look at my journey, as you well know, it was through taking secondhand hats and restoring them, and then deconstructing them and reconstructing them, and then going into starting to build new hats, and then progressing through the different styles of new hats to getting ultimately to the Homburg. So there's a number of stages, if you like, all the way through there. And I'm a bit with you. I think that there are, you know, like it could be apprentice hatter, or some name could be put to somebody that they need to restore 10 hats and show that they've restored 10 hats to a resaleable situation, and then, you know, and how they've done it, etc., with a video or something, and then they could be achieving that level. And the other thing is also looking at clearly what would be a good idea to consider is having those people that want to be bound by this type of self monitoring, if you like, and management of our skill sets, to have like a guild or a body that's created that we all pay a certain amount of money into, but administers the body, if you like, and it doesn't have to be a big thing. It's just administration at the end of the day. And then what that does, it means that you join, and then you go through a process that says you will be bound by the process that we take people through to qualify. And the main thing is really making sure that the customer gets fair quality, value for money, and service, so that all of those things are to a level that we would want them. Because you and I have talked about, for instance, having this sort of collective, this co-op, if you like, of hatters that actually we put together a retail outlet, and there might be 5 or 6 shops, like an arcade of hat brands with, you know, several hats that each of the brands got up for sale. They've got the different styles and so on. But from a consumer's point of view, they, I'm sure, would want to know that each of those hatters have agreed to work to a certain standard, and at the very least, we actually declare that. As an example, I don't have an ASM sewing machine, and so I sew my sweatbands on a machine, or by hand, mostly on a machine, and they're sewn through the ditch. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Bates, Lock and Co, and others currently do that, but it's probably a nice thing if somebody is a connoisseur of hats or a collector of hats, that they know that that's what they're going to be getting, rather than it be a surprise when the hat turns up. And another thing is things like the hat bands here. You know, some people stitch them directly onto the felt, and I do that for most of the time. But there are times where I'm now moving towards like the festival hats or some of the other hats where the bands can actually be lifted off, exchanged, and so that gives the flexibility to the customer. And again, as a consumer, that might be a really big positive. If you're on a limited either budget or space at home for hats, and you only want 1 or 2 hats, then it might be that that is particularly of interest to you. So there are a number of different things, and actually, when you start looking at the anatomy of a hat, I'm getting a lot of details here, but when I'm sitting down talking to a client and I've got my check sheet there, there's probably 20 different questions that we go through. You know, from things like, you know, what are you going to do with the hat? When are you going to wear it? Is it going to be an everyday hat? Is it going to be to go with a particular outfit that you've got? Is it something that you see yourself wearing 100 times a year, twice a year? You know, what's the frequency of wear? Are you going to go out in bad weather in the hat? You know, is it important to you that it stays in shape without you having to do any aftercare? Do you feel comfortable with using a hat brush? Do you have a hat brush? You know, to use to look after the hat. You know, and a lot of clients go, "Whoa, hang on a minute! I thought I was just buying a hat here. I'm not having my life story about, you know." But it's given them permission, if you like, to be able to buy a quality hat, because I don't want people walking around in the high street with one of my hats on that hasn't been looked after. I want to make sure we've got somebody that's, you know, they're on board with the whole hat thing, you know.
No, correct. And you know, that, like, so I'm thinking very procedurally because what you mentioned guild, right? So obviously the entity has to have this credibility. That credibility really comes from having some sort of governing council, right? So the idea is, you have, it's not just one person, especially not somebody like me, because I don't know what I'm doing. But as long as we have assembled a council that has, so obviously, you, Paul, already have a reputation. Robert has a reputation already. And there were several other hatters that I may not know, but you gentlemen know via your networking that might be wanting to get involved. Obviously Steve Heck is not a hatter, but he knows Thompson, Grant Thompson, the gentleman at Optimo. I always forget his first name, but I believe it's Grant. I'm just going to go with Grant Thompson. But folks like that have established reputations, and it's in the coming together, right? So obviously Paul's opinion and Mr. Thompson's opinion, Robert's opinion, and any other hatters that we may have associated with the guild in terms of a governing council, collectively we come together. And obviously it's very easy because now we have things like video chat, where now somebody in Canada and somebody in the UK, somebody in Australia, as long as we find the right time, we can come together and have these discussions to be able to build out that framework, right? And after we build out what everything in that framework, and obviously there'll be disagreements, but the idea is, if we can come to a relative agreement on, right, and maybe there might be a core set of items that everybody agrees on, and then we have a system for delineating those items and addressing items that we don't agree on, and then come up with that blueprint, that framework. And then ultimately somebody like myself, I'm pretty good with, in terms of the idea of psychometrics and measurement, applying a way to be able to ascertain what that delineation, what's that demarcation point that says, okay, this is going to define what the minimally competent hatter is. Obviously it wouldn't be me personally, it would be with you guys, with the guild, and other experts that we can bring in to kind of set that demarcation point. And that becomes the basis for a measurement system to create, maybe a certification or something along the lines where somebody can go and say, you know what, I'm accredited or I'm certified by this governing body, and it means something.
Yeah, I think I'm of the opinion of myself that I'm probably not as good a hatter as Robert, for instance, and definitely not as good as the gentleman at Optimo. I'm still on the curve, learning and going upwards. And in fact, I think something like this would probably help inspire, motivate me to do better. Now,
Right.
What doing better looks like is therefore the challenge. So I think what we'd need to consider on top of that are actually workshops that we ask for, financial consideration to be made to whoever's putting on the workshop. But for those people that are on the program, so to speak, is attending an online workshop to actually learn more about the things that we're doing to ensure that we deliver a good solid hat. Because one thing that we've got to remember is that people like myself and Robert, for instance, are making relatively small numbers of hats a year, okay?
Right.
And they're all open crown, so they're not using shaped block. Well, in my case, they're not using shaped blocks. They're using the dome shape, and then I'm shaping all of the crowns on top. Now, I think Robert, I'm not sure, and hopefully he'll be able to join us, but he may have some molds. I don't know. But of course, a lot of the bigger companies will use the metal plates to actually shape the hats, and it's that's where are we talking about encompassing those hatters that are in the several hundreds, if not thousands, of hats a year, or are we talking about the sort of loosely called artisan type single small companies that are sprouting up and having an effect on the marketplace, but we want to actually manage it so that or self-manage so that we're having a positive effect on the marketplace.
Correct.
Because the other thing is things like quality of materials. you know, and
Right.
where are people buying up? So what we don't want is for people to actually buy felts from a supplier that's perhaps different to some of our other people that we're working with, and the client to get the wrong idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Josh is opining on a course that he attended that he took the other day. He learned one thing, and I don't know how much that course cost you, Josh, but maybe that's worth, you know what I mean? Maybe that was worth the cost. To, for me, I think of, one thing could be a really big thing. It really sets your product apart, So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I couldn't tell you that
Well,
for you because, I don't know.
Josh, similar thing happened to me when I bought Robert's course, and I've talked about that on several occasions, but I cannot stress enough how if somebody is coming into hatting for the first time, Robert's course is very, very useful. And in fact, you can download the modules and you can keep them, and $1,
Yeah,
and you can actually refer to them. But I mean, Robert's course is considerably more than that, but it's nowhere near the thousands of dollars that we've learned about with the on-site training that we've seen. And there lies a very interesting thing as well, because on the one hand, there are hatters like myself that want to learn and can go through the self-learning with these online courses. But then there are others that are enthusiasts,
right.
And people that might want to dabble into hat making.
Correct.
And want to come on an actual course that is with a hatter at somebody's premises, which is ultimately why I'd love to actually. Oh, that's good, Josh. Yeah, why I'd actually like to do, and I think those are two different things, because I think there are a lot of people that are sort of driven by craft and handmade items, and would love to come to a 1 or 2 day session and actually mingle with other like-minded people, and end up walking away with a hat that it's got a story behind it. They've had an interview with the hatter, they've worked out the sizing, the hat's been blocked, they've then dressed it and shaped it and put all of the accoutrements on the hat before they've then have been fitted, and walk away with a lovely new hat. And for cocktail parties and the like, that's a nice story to be able to tell.
I agree. I think the idea of there's obviously there's several layers to all of this. And that's probably an understatement. Of course, they found me again. Sorry about that, guys. But I literally tried to silence my phone at the beginning of the stream, and it turns out I was unsuccessful. This goes to show you I'm not that tech savvy as sometimes I think I am. But I digress. I went and looking through this, I was thinking about things like membership, right? Paul mentioned a learning, right? The idea of education. Because those things kind of go hand in hand, right? The idea is, well, if the idea is to certify on what makes quality, well, who's teaching the quality? And the nice thing is that's Roberts already has courses, obviously Josh just mentioned a course that he took. There's material out there. The idea is it would have to be kind of a partnership. And then the idea is that all the entities that be involved, obviously the council members, governing bodies, assessors, and they might be some of the same folks, meaning the folks that are part of the council might also serve as assessors. If one has to go and, let's say, physically examine the hat to be able to certify that it's up to snuff, or several hats, right? Those are all decisions that will come out from the experts, what we call the subject matter experts, or SMEs, and we have to have a situation where it's beneficial, right? Not just because they want to do good, right? Because I know a lot of hatters want to do good, but we want to make it financially beneficial as well, so that this business, the folks that are coming to partner and give their time, get something out of it. Not just feeling good that they made, they certified somebody that, that's great. We all want that. But I want the folks that are partnering here to also have some sort of monetary benefit, because, time is valuable. So I want a situation where everybody can win.
I think that would be ideal. what I'd probably counsel would be that we would need to, if this is going to move forward, look at sizing the opportunity. And so what I mean by that is, I mean, we're talking about a sort of global type of opportunity here.
Right.
You know, which countries do we think would be appropriate because of language barriers and all the rest of it? And or else you could have a champion in each country that's actually a hatter and could interpret, etc. But and the other thing is, when sizing it is looking at what makes sense. You know, because if we overcomplicate it, it's going to make a lot of work for somebody with very little reward in the early stages. And so, again, there might well be that there's a sort of 3-year, 5-year plan to take the journey of actually evaluating this, putting something together and building it. Now, evaluation and starting something could happen fairly quickly within 6 months, but building it is something that I think it just needs to be thought through, because the last thing you really want is for people. I mean, I've got time on my hands to a degree, and can give some time to a project like this. I'm sure probably Robert. I don't think Robert does anything other than the hats now. I might be wrong now. I don't want to do him a disservice, but you know, he may or may not.
And the writing, I think the writing as well.
Yeah, of course, the writing. Yeah, which is great, of course. And but it's what is it going to take to do this, and how long is and what a sort of an investment is that? Because if the size is maybe we started off with 4 or 5 countries, and that might be America, Canada, it might be the UK, it might be parts of Europe, Germany or whatever, and or Italy or what have you. But if we pulled that together as a stage one, and the main thing really is running a pilot and getting the principle proven, and we're going to struggle in getting hats that have been made by people to be sent through for evaluation. So I suspect that it's all got to be online, and
correct,
and rely on honesty. For me showing you a hat, it can't be an Optimo hat that I've just relabeled. And correct. This is a bit cool.
Correct. And that's part of where the experts, right? The subject matter experts, where somebody like Robert, somebody like yourself, Paul, if somebody sends in a video of them making the hat, you know what I mean? Obviously, there are going to be things where, and that'll all be part of the framework. Is like, is this person really making this, or are they pretending? You know what I mean? Like, obviously, faking and cheating exist in any kind of valuation. And then obviously we'll just have to put our heads together to make sure that there's as little room for that as possible. Hopefully, no room for it, so that somebody's doing something and they're not trying to, game the system, so to speak.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you end up doing that, you're cheating yourself, because deep down that you are not making a quality product, and also you're cheating your customer. And for me, if your product isn't up to scratch, if your customer service isn't something that your customer likes, they're going to tell you. They're not going to pay out well-earned dollars or pounds to actually buy a hat and then put up with poor service or a poor fitting hat or poor quality materials. So you're just setting yourself up to fail, really.
Yeah. Josh says, one thing in my algo on YouTube is showing me young hatters. I sub them all and provide feedback if I can on their videos. Hey, that's great, Josh. See, I mean, those are things, those are called, we call that in psychology organizational citizenship behaviors, right? They're things that we don't obviously have to do, right? But we do them because we think a good of, obviously it's not an organization as much as it's a hobby, but they're kind of little things that we do for each other. That's why one of the many reasons why I love this hat community, because we do stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other things that I've been considering is whether to put together a pilot scheme for a TV program, because actually we see all these programs around chefs, and we see all these DIY programs, and we see these fashion programs, and we've got Sewing Bee over in the UK where they're sewing things. Well, it is possible to be able to do a program where people come in, either the public or other hatters, and actually make hats on the show and actually get judged at the end of the show. So the sort of thing that we're talking about here could actually roll on into something that becomes far bigger in terms of its appeal to the general marketplace. It's something different. How many times when you've walked down the street and people talk to you about your hats, have they been really
Brad?
Hi Brad.
Hey Paul, hey Luke.
Hi, good to see you. I was just saying, how many times have people stopped you and been really enthusiastic and want to know more about your hats? And it was just a thing that was on my mind as to whether, a production company that came up with that idea would actually make some sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think just and again, I don't pretend that I have my finger on the pulse of of the viewing audience, right? I have my opinions on what I think is cool, but for me, a hat program, that's, obviously I'm thinking big. I'm thinking things like, partnering with a network, maybe Netflix or Paramount or something like that. But I feel like there is some value, and obviously we know because, YouTube is part of that. YouTube is considered our network, right? It's our ability to publish content, and we have folks that view our content. So, but maybe with the right, with the right planning and with the right folks involved, we could have something that could cater to something a little bit more broader, that has a little bit more broader appeal. Because that's for me, and thinking business wise, the money is not in the hardcore. Right? I think of somebody like the UFC, a multi-billion-dollar business. They have hardcore folks like myself that will watch any fight because we love pugilism. But the real money is attracting those folks that are on the fringe, the folks that are like, well, I don't know too much about this, but I'm gonna go to an event, or I'm gonna buy this pay-per-view, or I'm gonna do this and dip my toes in it. The money is getting those folks that are what we call maybe casuals. The money's in the casuals and bringing them in.
I think it's part of, I've been looking at, we've been talking about marketing and we've been talking about how do you grow a hat business and so on. And it's about the various touch points that you have through the various media. And there's push marketing and there's pull marketing.
Right.
And when you've got something like this on television, it's pulling people into an area that they haven't considered before. Whereas what we're doing is we're pushing it out by putting our content onto the social media channels, our own YouTube things and what have you. So we're pushing it in front of people, but the pulling is really where it's going to get the big numbers. And I think what that can do is actually change the way people think about hats, wearing hats, and the culture of wearing hats, and actually the enjoyment of being part of the hat culture.
Correct.
Yeah. So there are some exciting thoughts here, Luke, that are worth exploring. But we're only a couple of people. We have to sort of think about how that might then play out.
Yeah. Brad, I didn't want to I want to make sure, because I don't know how much of this conversation you were able to at least be a part of. But really what we were talking about here, we started off with kind of like the idea of, well, what is hat quality, right? That's the basic, and we got into the idea of creating a governing body, right? And how that could look and how that would work so that it could be beneficial to all parties involved, right? So hat enthusiasts, right? The idea is that we're going to increase the quality of hats, of products that are out there, right? And the idea is for hatters to be able to have kind of a distinguishing, certification, for lack of a better term, or accreditation that they can say, you know what, don't take my word for it. My products have actually been peer reviewed by this organization. And the idea is, how do we create a credible organization that can make this happen?
Wow.
I don't know, Brad. What do you think?
Yeah, I didn't hear any of that.
Okay.
I love the idea. So you're talking about a hat guild.
Correct.
Basically. Yeah.
Correct.
I love it.
Yeah.
I don't know how feasible it is in the beginning, but I think it's worthwhile to pursue and see if you can get that going.
Yeah, yeah. And we obviously the framework is a big part of that. We had discussions about that because Paul jotted down some things, I jotted down some things. And in some of this conversation, obviously, I never meant really for this conversation to be done online. So this is obviously the germs of some of the conversation. Paul, forgive me if some of this stuff you wanted to just do privately, but I at least wanted to at least start broaching the topic, because also there might be other folks that view this video that want to be part of this. And obviously, I may not know them as well as you guys, but they could be really good partners. And, ultimately the details, that's something that we obviously want to get Robert involved, because he had those discussions. Robert's always been focused since I've known him, and hopefully he doesn't mind me talking about him while he's not here. But Robert is somebody that when you view him online, he's always there evaluating. Evaluation is a big part of what Robert does online. And it's really a part of, I think, his contribution to this community is, one, he's a teacher. He has a heart of a teacher. And he's not scared to tell you his opinion. And I love that about him. And I think a venue like this, no wonder he's interested in this idea. And hopefully, as we discuss privately and a little bit more further, he'll get excited about it, because I really did think about Paul and Robert, and there are other folks that hopefully will get involved as well. But the idea is, how do we get this in motion and get this from a really cool idea into execution? And then building a timeline, right, so that we can kind of judge ourselves in our progress.
Luke, I don't know whether you hear it, but we've got a really bad echo on here, and I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming.
We didn't have it before Brad joined, so I don't know whether it's anything.
Brad, if it's
equipment.
Yeah, it could have been.
Okay, I'm not hearing it. Let's see here.
Okay, just shut off. Oh no, now I hear it again.
Just said it's Brad.
Still hear it? Okay. Let me log off and log back in again.
All right, sounds good. All right. Let's see here. Josh just stated it was because of the Hatters Union that we can do freelance work due to the lawsuit that happened when Hatters wanted to work on the side, but the union did not like it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, interesting. I don't know a lot about the the history of the union, but yeah, that's something we'll definitely have to look into to kind of see.
Did that help?
No. Well, it went when you were off, but just come back.
Let me.
Yeah, it could just be that it's playing, like you have it on somewhere else and it's coming over the your mic or something. I don't know.
No,
I'm speculating here.
Yeah. It's interesting about how the industry is one that, back in the 1800s, and early 1900s was really on the up. And like I said, we've said before, I think the UK, for instance, was worth about 40 million hats a year. Well, right now, I think because of baseball caps and things, it's still worth an awful lot. But when you get into the finer quality hats, the trilbies, the fedoras, the festival hats, the Western hats to a degree, it's far less. And I think that's where the big companies are concentrating on the traditional market here in the UK. The smaller companies are getting into the opportunity to do with the way that the culture in the music of Western music and or country music, shall I say, and how now films that we see, like you review on your channel, how these films are having an effect on people that think, okay, I'd like to wear a hat like that occasionally. Yeah. So it's having a minor effect, but where in the old days you would have had unions in these businesses that literally employed hundreds, if not thousands, of workers. Right. And I get that, to protect the workers. But today, yes, you've still got, in the UK, you've got a couple of companies that employ a lot of people, but it's nowhere near as many as it was. But it's predominantly on the hatters side rather than the milliners side. It's maybe 30 or 40, 20, 30, 40, smaller companies. And of course, they're usually owned by the entrepreneur that started them. And so a union situation is not really something that would come into play.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a very interesting exchange here between Nathan and Josh. Nathan asked, he's curious about what the quality level of some of these young hatters. It seems that some of these hats are more work, are more artwork / costume versus functionality. And Josh replies that most of them are using wool as it's more affordable, but it's so hard to use. I think that this begs the question, like, obviously, and I had this in my framework, obviously felt selection and felt behavior, right, are big factors in determining the quality of a hat. Like the standards, right? Having standards. And that's when somebody like, obviously, besides Paul, Robert, and all the other hatters, having somebody maybe like FEPSA, involved in some capacity where that's their whole business. Like they're going to know, obviously without essentially promoting their product over somebody else, right? But the idea is they could help create the standard for how we could judge felt quality, and hopefully between all of us, we'd be able to come up with a framework so that somebody that submits something that is subpar, right? Maybe it doesn't have to be FEPSA, but there's got to be an objective way to determine felt quality that we can use when somebody makes, let's say, if it's going to be a submission of a hat for review.
I think you're right. And what I found interesting, and I didn't have a clue before I started, was not only are there different weights of felt, but there's different stiffnesses of felt. Correct. And then there's different levels of pouncing that the people at FEPSA will do. And what this means is that when we get felts turn up, they can be very stiff or they can be very floppy. Yeah. and therefore, they are then looked upon by the hatter as to, well, okay, what stiffness do I need for the hat? What type of hat am I going to turn this into? And what finish do I want? And what stiffness? And I mean, I've got some beautiful felts that are long hair felts that before I bought them from FEPSA, and frankly, I didn't know, I just bought a bundle of felts from them. And now I've got it, and it's one, if not my favorite hat. It's just wonderful. But pouncing, I mean, I the other night, I don't know, I don't think I've got the hat here. I was working on a hat, and I literally pounced it for just over an hour, and my arms were aching after I was doing it because I don't have an electric sander. I do it all by hand, and I'm turning the block as I'm doing it on the stand and so on. And the difference it makes, I would put it that actually there are people out there that you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between some of the rabbit fur felts that I've pounced for an hour or so and a beaver fur felt. It's really interesting. It's not until you put water on them and you can see the amount of water that the felt takes in that then you'll be able to see, actually this is probably a better felt. I don't know what you think about that, Brad, but it's
yeah, I was making sure I wasn't muted. The thoughts that were going through my mind as well relate to not just giving some standards to the industry, but I was thinking about I think half the job is educating the public, on the hats. Brought up the wool hats because they're affordable, because people aren't used to wearing hats. They're not used to spending hundreds of dollars on a hat. Yeah. And to them, that seems, outrageous. So they'll buy a cheap wool hat. They'll have a lousy experience with it. And, that may sour them on the hat wearing. So you've got to, share those standards with the public and say, hey, here's why you want to look at a rabbit hat. And so I would imagine that half the organization is focusing on the hatters and the other half is focusing on the public and the educational component there. So that was just kind of what I was thinking in my head.
I think the guild, like you say, if there was a guild that was created, you're right. There's a bridge between the guild and the suppliers. There's then the education of the consumer in terms of making them more aware of what the options are and what makes up a good hat as opposed to not so good hat. Correct. And then working with the hatters themselves to take them on the journey so that they appreciate that this is really something. I mean, if you were becoming a plumber or an electrician, there's a 3 or 4 year course that you go through called an apprenticeship, and at the end of it you get certification, and you feel pretty chuffed with yourself that you've gone through, you've actually been educated, and you've done some work, and you got paid, a lot of them, and you've got a trade that will take you through your life and provide for your family. Correct. And I think where we're not seeing here in the UK is the value perhaps that's being put on the skill sets and the abilities of hatters reflected in the price of the hat to then sustain the ability to have an income for these hatters to carry on and do it as a full-time job. And that's sad, because it's a downward spiral if we're not careful. And so the only way to turn that around is really through patronage from people that have got money to actually buy the hats, education, tell the marketplace about the advantages of buying a decent hat, the advantages of wearing a hat, and actually all of those things that are perhaps neglected today. And then in that whole package, if you like, and there's a lot of things there, that will take the market forward to give us all more of an opportunity to sell more hats. Correct.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is wow. Just like a lot of good discussions, sometimes you come away from these things with more questions, but that's okay. Like I said, I feel like, well, first of all, we didn't have Robert on here, but I feel like maybe the next step is to have kind of an offline discussion. Obviously, I'm gonna go and just ask Paul and Robert to be on the part of that discussion. Obviously, if others want to join, then you guys can message me. If this is something that you're interested in being part of. But right now, I feel like a discussion between myself, Robert, and Paul offline, and then what we'll do is maybe we'll follow up in a future episode, right? We'll talk about maybe we'll give up maybe updates, right? So as we start going through with plans, maybe what will happen is maybe we'll try to give an update for you guys. That way the audience, if you guys are watching this and you guys are excited, maybe you guys are not excited to be part of it, but you might be excited to hear about what's going on with us. We'll give you, updates to the degree that we can. Obviously, some of this stuff is going to be, I guess, I don't know. I come from the government world, so I think of classified information, but it's not classified. That sounds like too important. It's like, but it's more private business oriented information, that we won't share, maybe won't share right away, but we'll share after maybe we've executed. And I'm excited. I got to tell you, I'm really excited about this because, and I feel like I'm feeling that enthusiasm. And Paul probably has seen this because Paul has done consulting with a lot of businesses, and maybe you guys, maybe this is very familiar, Paul, in terms of some of the excitement that, a lot of the folks that you've worked with feel when they're first starting with their business, but the nice thing is that we have folks like yourself, we have folks like Robert involved in several of you folks, right? I'm thinking of Nathan as well, because Nathan is a franchisee. We learned that in one of the previous episodes, and you don't go through all that. You don't become a franchisee for 30 plus years without knowing a thing or two about business and a bunch of things that I think would be valuable. So, I'm excited. I got to tell you guys.
Yeah, I think I guess you have them in America. We have non-for-profit making organizations. And I guess really that's what it would need to be set up as. But on from that, but just caveating on that, the idea that we had about setting up the marketplace online shop that you would administer, let's say, that's the area where you can make money. So I think the main thing is keeping the guild, or whatever you want to call it, to a non-profit. Yes, people pay money in, but that money is accounted for and used for educational purposes, administrative purposes, whatever it might be, but that's an open book, if you like, for people to look in and say, yeah, okay, this is being done for the greater good of hatting.
And hatters, right? So the idea, right? So we know that's been an ongoing discussion here, is we know how difficult it is for hatters to stay in business and to be able to turn a profit. But if we can provide another means for them, right? So if somebody comes in and agrees to be part of, to be an assessor, then hopefully we can set up something that could make it so that, hey, man, this is worth my time, right?
I think the other thing is that once you've got a cooperative, and I work with only 2 or 3 hatters here in the UK, and it's a very loose relationship. They ask me advice, I give it to them. But today, for instance, I had an email, a message from one of the hatters I work with. He asked, have I got a particular color felt that I'd be prepared to sell him? Now, I've sold him some felts. I told him that, I keep 100, 150 felts in stock at any one time from Vepsa. And if I've got it, I'm more than happy to sell it to him, and I'll just replace it the next order. And so I think that by creating this collective, if you like, or whatever you want to call it, that I would hope that we would be able to encourage that. So I've got a customer at the moment that I'm meeting for the first time this Friday, having gone backwards and forwards with him. He's got a size 63 centimeter head. Now, I don't have a block that's 63. I mean, this must be a pretty big gentleman. That's but I'm thinking, well, what do I do? Do I get a printed one? One of these, I don't know what we call them now. But anyway, the printed ones, or do I get a wooden one made that I can get my hat block people to get one made, but it's going to take me probably 6 weeks to get one made. Or do I make one to the 61 size that I've got at the moment and then actually stretch it out to 63? It's because all of my hats are open crown. So actually you could make a 61 crown. You could then stretch it, albeit it would take the sides out a bit rather than the top. Not quite sure how that would end up, but it's, and if somebody had a there you go, a 62, and if you've got like a 62, you can go to a 63. I've done 61s to 62s before, but not 61s to 63. But it's but if we've got a collective going on, that's the sort of thing that people can help each other out with. And I think for me, it's all about not letting this art die, and I'm very mindful that at my age now, I've perhaps got 10 good years left in me, let's hope, but in that 10 years, yes, I want to earn some money, but actually it'd be lovely to pass on and contribute something to the greater possibility of hats coming into fashion into the UK as to what that legacy. But a
tremendous legacy.
Well, it's fun, it's
correct.
I don't know about you, but in the last 2 years I've had probably more fun and it doesn't feel like work when you're actually doing what you're doing that you love.
Correct.
Of course. But I don't earn enough money from it to actually be a full-time job. I don't need to now anyway, but in putting it alongside my business coaching, then it all makes sense. It's it's an enjoyable way of working, really.
Yeah, man. Wow. I completely agree, Paul, because ultimately, I'm all about, like I said, I'm approaching 50 fast, and I've gotten to the point where I'm dedicated to having fun in all things I do. Obviously, not everything can be fun. That's just life. But to the degree that I can help it, I want to surround myself with activities and things. And obviously, if there's money that I can make and sustain myself, that's great too. But fun, I'm willing to pay for fun, right? Like we all pay for entertainment. Like, why wouldn't we pay, into this hobby? I mean, we already do when we pay for our hats. But there are other avenues. And one of these we've discussed here is, obviously our time is our most valuable resource. And all the things associated with that, we can put forward to something that's bigger than ourselves. And that would hopefully get remembered for generations, right? Well after we're all gone from this from this planet. So
what's interesting, Luke, is that you and I are buying hats that may be 50, 60, 80 years old, and I'm sure you are as well, Brad. And we have them here, and there is a story. We've actually had a conversation about, wouldn't it be great if we could take a hat like Larigussimo that you're wearing?
Right.
It's come from Argentina to the UK and now on to America. Now, how did they get from Argentina to the UK? Was there a distributor, or is there somebody that's gone, that's a cocaine dealer has gone from the UK, gone and bought himself a hat, brought it back to the UK?
Yeah, no,
absolutely. There are stories, there are so many stories behind these hats, because let's be honest, people that wear hats nowadays, they're characters. They really are, aren't they? There's always a lovely story behind them. They've either there's a reason why they're wearing the hat, and it's sometimes it's to make a statement, other times it's to have some fun, sometimes it's a practical reason. It might be a family thing, who knows? But that in itself would make a whole book. I actually got 3 books for Christmas on hats, which is amazing, because the only books I've ever read in my life, one was Paddington, and I think the other one was the history of David Bowie. Okay, so to get three books, I mean, but you know what? I've actually read 2 of them already. And it's like, why? Well, because I'm interested in it, because it can add value to what I'm doing, and actually got some great pictures in there, for inspiration for hats. And one of them was the one that was written by one of the gentlemen in Lock & Co. that talks about all the different types of hats and all the different things. And I just thought, there's another idea for you. You're a research person, Luke. You could write a book on maybe taking all the hats from the book that Lock & Co. have, which is about 100 different types of hats, and then putting a character and a story behind them. And you know what? I've actually been looking at doing some children's storybooks focused on hats, but with using AI to create the characters to actually generate short bedtime stories. So maybe 10 minutes long or whatever to do it. So who knows where this is going to end up, but I just thought I was making a hat one day. Now it's like a whole mishmash of thoughts and ideas.
I hear it. We got Nathan that just joined. Nathan, how's it going, my friend?
Hey, how's it going? I'm driving right now, so I'm gonna keep the camera off just to
be safe.
But fascinating conversation. I do, because I'm only gonna be on here for a few minutes. Brad, I'm telling you what, man, I started like binging Brad's YouTube videos.
How can you not?
Now, like, I'm caught up on Paul, so like I'm not just waiting for Paul's new one. But Brad has got some real, like, I love Brad's videos, man. I tell you, I've really enjoyed them. I love the history. The videos are well put together, and I just wanted to give you that little shout out there. I think that channel Nathan. Is going to continue to grow. I mean, it's I saw it. I was like, wow, this guy, he's got some well put together stuff here. The hat. It's a great conversation, because like the Hat Guild and the idea that you're going to have different levels of grades and quality standards, and like I'm a big boot guy, right? So there's a lot of independent boot makers that make some great boots. Now you've got big brands that they do their thing, and if I say the word Lucchese, to the general public, man, that's a great boot brand. But then when you start getting into the inner circles, then you like Lucchese, the standard is not what the world thinks that Lucchese's standards are at. So there's a lot of intricacies that go into that. Now, as an operator, I'm thinking, okay, so with this guild idea, and you could have these different a standard, a committee, and I'm thinking, okay, well, how do we get there? How do you get to that idea? How do you put that in fruition? And I was going to ask, because I don't know, are there like hat shows, like independent hat makers that go to show? Because I know, like in the boot world, and like I'm a big whiskey guy, in the bourbon world, they do the same thing. They have these different like trade shows and these gatherings where these independent boot makers can come gather. They do competitions, they give out recognition and awards, and I think if I don't, you could tell me, like, I don't know if the hat world does that, but I think that if something like that were organized, I'm just thinking like ground level, where do we start to get to this grand idea of a committee guild that really sets the standard for what a hat is, and then you can kind of get into, okay, well, that committee or that organization has said, hey, that person right there is a master hatter. and the reputation that carries would mean, leaps and bounds. So is there an opportunity where we can say, okay, this facility on this date, we're going to bring in, some hat makers to come in, display your, I think we've probably all been to trade shows.
Yeah, I think to answer, at least start trying to answer some of that question, I think it has to be something where, right? So obviously I don't have the same network that Paul and Robert have. Robert, I got to tell you, has a tremendous lineage, right? His lineage, right? He talked about Art Fawcett and several other hatters, right? That Robert knows well, right? And these are hatters that I got to tell you, Art Fawcett, like there's not too many folks, right? And also Thompson at Optimo, like those two gentlemen, they have an impeccable reputation. They scream credibility. Like for me, it starts with somebody knowing those gentlemen, right? I know Steve Heck, who knows Mr. Thompson at Optimo. If we could get gentlemen like that involved, and obviously there are others, but the idea is, right? And I always take this into like the hip hop analogy, right? Like there's guys that are rappers, right? These are the guys the rappers listen to. So, right, just like hatters, like Robert's mentioned, several folks, that these are the hat makers that I buy my hats from. So folks like that, you start with those folks because they already have that reputation from the years of being in the business, of maybe they also have a lineage. And some of them are retired, right? We obviously talked about, hey, good to see you. We talked about some of these folks already like retired, right? Art Fawcett being one of them, but maybe they would still be interested in loaning some of their expertise to this project. Even if they only gave me their opinion, I would really think that's highly valuable. And if they spent a little time, that's wow, what's not to like?
I think on the
I think that would carry a lot. Like what you said, you've got hatters and personalities in the industry. Right. How much weight that carries, when they can add their name to the community and say, we've kind of created a hierarchy of like what standards need to be set in the hatting industry.
Correct. Paul, I
was just saying that in the UK, I am not aware of a specific hatters show. Milliners show, yes, and as part of a fashion show, yes. But what does happen is that there are hatters that I know of that go along to local fairs that might be like a country fair. If you can imagine that there be a fairground, with a field with lots of show tents in, they might take a stand there and people come along. Now, the challenge with that, and I've spoken to my wife about this, is that how many people turn up on the day, with the ability of spending £200 on a hat when they haven't even considered a hat before. So it's part of the journey, if you like, of just making people aware of your brand and hats. Now, I get that, but there is a cost associated with going along to these shows, and it's not insignificant when you're only a small hatter doing a limited turnover. So it's, but I think that if we got a collective together, so if in the UK we got, let's say there's 25, 30 hatters, and maybe 10 of them got together and said, okay, we're willing to work with each other. We're open-minded. We'll take a view on this. Then maybe we could get something together around that. But I think because of the small number, it would need to be added to like a fashion show or something and said, look, you're doing a fashion show at the National Exhibition Centre. Could there be an area that will be just for hatters? And we come along and do our thing, I don't know, but it will be a challenge, I think, over here.
Yeah. It's so obviously we already seen, again, I don't think any of these ideas are mutually exclusive. They're just various aspects of what could be part of this guild. Right. I'm going to just use that term because I don't know. I always like the word guild. I don't know. It just feels, I don't know. It just feels, it has like the air of authority, right?
Yeah. Feels fancy.
Yeah. It feels fancy. Yeah.
I pulled it out of my head because I'm a historian. And so the history of guilds is fascinating anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And wouldn't it be lovely to have a stamp made up that was a guild stamp that we could actually put inside our leather sweatbands? So we've got our own brand, and we've got that on the other side. It's just something that, it'll be a nice thing to do. And it's but it's, how do we take it from the embryonic stages of the thought and to actually happening? And like I said earlier on, I think if we're too ambitious, we wouldn't get anything done. So if we spend some time on planning and thinking through, what can we do in the early stages as a first stage or something, and then see what reaction we get, size up the opportunity, work out to see what it's going to cost us to do and all that, then well, then we've probably got some movement. But and time-wise, it's going to take a while to do.
No, I'm excited. Paul, I appreciate, again, we're very like-minded in that whole idea of a stepwise approach. Again, that's my terminology, but it really much describes like the way you go about things. And I am a big believer in that. And it's not that is unique to us, but I always had that. We always had that in common. I smile whenever you talk about that, because I always imagine myself, talking to clients and saying, well, we're going to take a stepwise approach. But it's exciting. Obviously we're going to have some conversations. Robert wasn't able to be here. But what we'll do is maybe Robert, Paul, and myself will get together, and then maybe we'll discuss, obviously if there's anybody that wants to be involved, just send me a message privately, either on Facebook or however you get in touch with me. And then, again, I don't want to promise anything because, again, this is kind of a collective effort. I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with all the parties involved. And, I'm excited because this is kind of like, I've never imagined it would get to this point to even have this discussion, let alone try to make something like this happen. So I appreciate all you guys for being part of the stream. I think at this point, we're going to just try to close this out. Josh says it's like the Hatters Union, right? And then I posted in the chat about the Hatters Union. All right, that sounds good. I'll check that out, Josh. But yeah, gentlemen, thank you guys for joining me here today. Obviously, if you're watching this live or in this syndication, you can feel free to post comments. I want to make sure that you guys, as always, support these gentlemen on screen, support the folks, that are in the comments, as well as all the folks that you've seen here. Because again, the whole point of this guild and this idea is for hat people to help other hat people, right? And to create new hat people. So I tell you guys to keep supporting, and you guys know what I'm going to say, right? Even if you don't do that and support these gentlemen and all the other folks that are part of this channel, the one thing you got to do, or else we'll get the guild coming after the non-existent guild, but the idea of the guild after you, and they won't
soon to come guild.
Yeah, we don't have that kind of sway, but maybe we can just at least hit that subscribe button and get you guys to support. But other than that, the one thing you got to do is stay hatting, my friend. Have a great day. Ciao, everybody.
Thanks, Luke.
See ya.
See you guys.